move into our second topic, which is always, I think, a vexed one when one talks about feminism, especially around International Women's Day, which was, as I said, a couple of weeks ago now, and that is the role of men in feminism. And I wanted to talk about this in the context of a couple of controversies. The first being the controversy surrounding the video made by the Sydney Boys High Prefect body for International Women's Day, which went viral. And we'll show you a little clip of that now.
Feminism is important to me because when I was 12, my dad told me I should be ashamed of my body and that I had thunder thighs.
Feminism is important to me because I was called a bitch and a stupid whore by multiple boys when I refused to send naked pictures of myself to their friend.
Feminism is important to me because when I give directions at work, I'm called a bitch rather than a leader, and bossy rather than assertive.
So, Erin,
I've got to say, I read the Sydney Girls piece before I saw this video, which you showed me just before this show, and I actually didn't realise exactly what they've done, but they are speaking as if they're a women.
I know.
It's just outrageous.
It is, isn't it? It is outrageous.
Yeah.
I felt quite outraged as well.
You do kind of wonder how it got through to the keeper. I just don't understand.
And who thought this was a good idea? You know, I'm going to be gentle on the boys because they're not adults. And, you know, and they thought they were having a really good go at supporting feminism. But it is absolutely astounding. But also the praise they received. So I saw that video firstly get shared quite widely and get shared by a lot of my friends who consider themselves feminists and said, isn't this a great video for IWD? And it was only later when the backlash happened and the letter from the girls' high school that they sort of retreated and went, well, I haven't actually thought about the misrepresentation or us having to hear these issues through a male voice for them to have relevance.
It is bizarre, isn't it? And it's been interesting on social media looking at the reactions. And, of course, there's been the typical tirade about, oh, you know, men can't do anything right. Look at the boys. They were just trying to help. But it really, to me, when I looked at the video, I just was gobsmacked for the same reasons as you've identified. And I think the last paragraph of the letter that the Sydney Girls High students wrote, which I think I've got a little quote of it here, which was something like where they say, we need to ask why male voices are needed to bring attention to these issues that if expressed by women would be disregarded. I actually think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think, I don't think, I mean, sure there are people who dispute this, but my view is that it's really important that men are involved in feminism. I went to the IWD march on the weekend in Sydney and it was fantastic to see a lot of men marching alongside women. But I think that what is disappointing is the different reactions that you see when a man makes a feminist argument and a woman makes that same argument. It's a little bit like parenting in public as a mother and a father. People's expectations are different and fathers traditionally get a lot more praise publicly for that kind of thing. I read a really interesting book recently. It's a memoir by a young Melburnian who talks about their transitioning. And one of the interesting anecdotes in that book, it's called Finding Nevo, it's fantastic, I recommend it to you, is Nevo tells a story about prior to their transition, they were, they'd often make feminist arguments in public spaces and cop abuse for it. Post-transitioning and publicly identifying as a male, making those same arguments received applause. And I mean, that just shows you the discrepancy. And they were absolutely outraged by that reaction.
Because in some circles, being called a feminist could be the worst thing that you could call someone. It's thrown around as an insult. Whereas when a man stands up and says, I'm a feminist, it's praise all over. It's applause, and they're held to a different standard, even on feminism. It's case in point really for us.
I know, it is bizarre. It's sort of like actually the parenting point is an interesting one because I certainly find that where there's a father who takes time out from his day to go to a school activity for his child, praise. Yeah. What a committed dad. What a great dad. And if mum does, she just doesn't have any commitment to her career. And you feel like going,
and Sarah,
seriously?
I've heard the phrase, "Oh, Dad's babysitting tonight."
Oh,
babysitting, that's his job.
No, it's unbelievable.
Do you babysit?
I know the double standards are really quite remarkable. One of the things that I thought was also interesting about this video, and it's at the end of it, where I think effectively the boys say something like, well, feminism is important to the women in our lives, and so it should be important to us too. And I thought, well, no. Like, feminism should be important to you because you believe in equality between the genders, not because you've got women in your lives. And it raised to me the question, it brings in the idea of identity politics more broadly too. I mean, is the concept of equality between different cultures or people of ethnic diversity only important to you because you know an Aboriginal person or you know someone who's from China? Or, I mean, it's just a bizarre kind of argument.
And it also doesn't acknowledge that feminism can be really beneficial to men as well. I mean, and we are, if we are talking about parenting, that's one of the prime examples. It's really difficult for men, it can be, for men to, do as much primary childcare as women do, because it's not as accepted culturally. And that's just one example of how feminism can actually benefit men as well, but it's not seen that way.
So true. Yeah. Look, Sarah, it's a total side issue on this one, but I also want to raise, again, I'm going to put my teaching hat on, Sydney boys and Sydney girls, two very different experiences on the same topic of feminism. Why are they two different schools? It's 2017. New South Wales does segregated public education like nowhere else in Australia. You don't find as many single-sex public schools in Queensland, in Victoria and things like that, although there are a couple. So I've taught in, single-sex and co-ed schools, and one of the interesting things, I see it played out, is that the boys would have sat there and said, we think this is a really, really great idea. And without a woman in the room, one of their peers going, WTF, put that the hell away.
Yeah, that's right, because there's no one to counterbalance it.
Or why don't we make the video together or something like that? That educating one sex in the absence of the other, this is just leading them to be segregated, and the boys wanting a medal for saying they're a feminist.
Yeah, I think that I think that that's sort of the feel of it when you watch it. I mean, another of the interesting controversies around International Women's Day was about the much-loved Justin Trudeau, and specifically his wife, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau. I hope I've pronounced it correctly. So she, of course, is married to the self-proclaimed feminist Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who everyone loves. And she posted a photo of herself holding hands with her man, captioned something like this: "This week, as we mark International Women's Day, let's celebrate the boys and men in our lives who encourage us to be who we truly are, who treat girls and women with respect, and who aren't afraid to speak up in front of others."
We've got one day, one day a year. All the rest are for the boys. What's going on?
That's right. Look, if I was married to that man, I'd probably want to celebrate it too.
Hashtag humble brag.
However, how inappropriate was this for, the self-proclaimed, feminist leader to come out with a statement like that was just so ridiculous. And by doing so, demeaned all the women around.
It completely disempowers them. I mean, this idea that here she says, let's celebrate the boys and men in our lives who encourage us to be who we truly are. Well, you should be encouraged to be who you truly are, irrespective of whether or not boys and men encourage you to do that. And that's the whole point of feminism. I'm still pretty gobsmacked by it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely
and
astounded.
I don't know whether I can forgive Justin, quite frankly.
Do you think he knew about it?
Well,
He
he's
might not have.
completely complicit in it. I mean, it was a photograph of him as well, and I just,
I know. It does sort of tarnish him just a little. But I must say, maybe we'll wait for next year. They might fix it up in time for International Women's Day 2018. One can only hope.